Hi, friends, and welcome back to the Business of Boutique Fitness. I'm Adina Cooper, and today we're diving into a topic that makes most people feel a little squirmy. I'm talking about feedback. Yes, it's the conversation that you've all been avoiding with your coach, your front desk team member, or maybe even your partner or your family member. But in boutique fitness, our teams are small, our relationships are personal, and our work is emotional. And that's what makes the magic, but it's also what makes feedback fairly tricky. So let's look at the stats. Employees who've received meaningful feedback in the past week are 80% more likely to be fully engaged. Only 23% of employees strongly agree that they have received meaningful feedback in the past week. And disengaged employees cost the global economy approximately $438 billion in lost productivity in 2024 alone. A few more for you. Highly engaged employees are 80% less likely to leave their organization to their less engaged peers. And while 50% of managers believe they provide weekly feedback to their direct reports, only 20% of the employees strongly agree that they receive such feedback regularly. So if we want more feedback, why are we so bad at giving it or receiving it perhaps? And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. I'm going to be walking you through the myths and facts about feedback, how to give it using some key models such as Marshall Goldsmith's FeedForward approach, how to receive it without wanting to crawl into a hole, and how to have those courageous conversations to keep your team strong. So let's look at some of the myths we sometimes hear. And from years in fitness leadership, these are the most common ones we hear from studio owners. Oh, if I ignore it, it'll just fix itself, it'll be okay. Or perhaps it'll hurt their feelings. I don't want to hurt their feelings. And in some cases, we even hear, it's not my place. But here's the truth. Avoiding feedback doesn't protect relationships. It erodes trust. And when someone genuinely cares enough to tell you the truth, it builds credibility. And if you're in a leadership role, it's your place and your responsibility. If you aren't giving that feedback to your team, you're denying them the chance to grow. You're denying them the chance to improve. And your job as a leader is to help people grow. And I always think, and we've probably all heard this saying, but feedback is a gift, and it truly is. It's ideas given from someone who cares enough to notice, to offer perspective, and to help you improve. So I want you to think about this, and there's a very easy anagram that allows us to really think about when is the right time to give feedback. And it's called MINE. So first, M, motivational, when it perhaps inspires someone. Informational, when it helps them work smarter. Necessary, when it's essential performance or perhaps safety. And explicit, when it's specific and actionable. And if you're ticking just one of these boxes, it's time to speak up. And people want more feedback. Employees want more feedback. The research that we just heard a second ago shows us that. But we're not giving it enough. And this ties in really nicely with some of the other episodes you'll find in the podcast, where we talk about self-awareness. And if you're aware enough, and if you are self-aware and you're leading with emotional intelligence, then feedback should be a big part of your team culture. And on average, we should be giving 5 pieces of good feedback to every 1 piece of constructive feedback. And long gone are the days where we sandwich our feedback. So a lot of us were taught that way. A lot of us experienced feedback in that way. It is not productive. It doesn't lead to good results, and it certainly doesn't build trust and psychological safety within your team. So if you have used that recently, that's okay, but let's park that. We're moving forwards into a much more productive, trust-building approach to giving feedback. So we're going to start today talking about how we give feedback. So as a leader in your business, how do you give feedback? So Marshall Goldsmith has a really simple model called FeedForward, and it ultimately flips the script from dwelling on the past to focusing on the future. So instead of saying perhaps, you keep messing up class start times, you're constantly starting late, you might say instead, going forwards, let's make sure we start every class exactly on time so members get the full experience. It's about talking about what's next, not what's wrong, and focusing and giving someone clear, positive target to aim for. And the feed-forward model is simple. FEED. Start with the facts. What are the specific facts? Not judgments. I'm talking about facts. Then think about the explanation, so the E. How did you interpret these facts? You own it. How did that impact you? Then we're going to look at how the effects it's had. So what was the impact of what's happened to you? Why you're giving them that feedback, whether it be the impact to you, to others. What can you observe and how did this impact you, the business, etc.? And then the D, direction. How can the receiver move forwards? What can they do to make this a different choice next time? So really think about that. So let's make it fitness specific in this scenario. Imagine a coach who is fantastic with energy, but struggles with remembering clients' names, perhaps. In this scenario, feed-forward looks like this. You've got such great energy in class. So we've given them the facts, and I know your members love it when you greet them by name. Going forward, let's use everyone's name at least twice in this class. So we've explained the fact. We have given them the effects, so the clients really like it when you use their name. And we've given them direction of how they should be using it in each class, so using it twice in every class. And another concept to bring in here, and one that I would highly recommend digging into further, is Radical Candor by Kim Scott. And it's the sweet spot where you care personally and you challenge directly. So truth plus care equals trust. And this just further supports and gives a different way of thinking about when you give feedback. And this is a topic now that we're going to move on to that people often don't receive training on, haven't necessarily thought about, but it's actually how we receive feedback. And I'm sure many of you out there listening to this today probably have never been given any advice, any training, undertaken any workshops on how to receive feedback. But you may have perhaps have been on workshops for how to give it or been spoken about in that in past. And I think it's really important to think about the stages we go through when we get feedback. When we first get feedback, it can sometimes feel, it feels huge. But over time, we know that feeling starts getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And feedback, we go through the similar stages of grief. And that's okay. And different people move through that journey at different paces. Some of us process that feedback very quickly and get to that acceptance stage, whereas others may stay in that anger, the denial phases for a little bit longer. And when we begin to understand that this is how people receive feedback, it helps us with how we deliver it. It also helps us understand perhaps their emotional reaction. And this ties back into some other topics that we talk about in the podcast around self-awareness and how we help others manage their emotions and how we acknowledge those, accept them, and inspire them to perhaps react differently next time. And one of my favorite models on this topic is the Sarah model. And it helps us explain why it feels so hard. So the first part of the Sarah model is shock. Especially when feedback is unsolicited but unexpected, it's a lot harder to process. Then we move into A, anger. And it can often be that point of, it can be denial, it can be, that's not fair, why me, why is this happening, I don't agree with that. We then reject it, the R. So they're wrong. It did not happen, that's not the case, other people don't feel that way, this is wrong. But once we go through those stages, and I challenge you to think about a time where you've perhaps felt those feelings, we get to the point of acceptance. And we get to start thinking about and really reflecting, okay, maybe there is some truth in that. And whilst you might not agree with everything that's been said, every single piece of feedback we get has some relevance. That is someone's perception. And we can grow each piece of feedback. And then the H in Sarah is help and hearing, and how do I move forwards? So it's really getting to that point where you've accepted it, you're now looking at how you become better. And I've personally, I can think back to many times where I've been through every one of those stages. And sometimes you go through in the span of 5 minutes. Other times it can take you a day, 2 days, sometimes weeks to process some information or feedback you've perhaps been given. And that's okay. We all go through that journey at different paces. But I challenge you to think about how you can become a little bit more self-aware so you can recognize some of the behaviors, actions, the things you're saying and the impact they have. But also, once you get that feedback, how do you go from below the line thinking, so that denial, that anger, that frustration, to moving above the line and really taking ownership and accountability for the way in which you perhaps made someone feel, although it's a situation that's happened. And there are a number of key ways that you can prepare for yourself for feedback that help make it easier, help make it more digestible. And I think a key point here as well is feedback should never be personal. It's not about you and your worth as an individual. Feedback should be there to help you grow, to help you develop. So these 5 things will hopefully help make feedback a little bit easier for you in the future when you get it. So firstly, keep an open mind. You may not completely agree with everything that person says, and that's okay. But I want you to keep an open mind and realize that this person is giving you that feedback because they truly care. They've taken the time to do this. There is a reason for that. Think about how you can adopt a growth mindset. As leaders, your job is to help people grow, and that starts with you. And we need to flip that script slightly and really think about adopting that mindset so that we can continually grow and become better at what we do every day. And as we talk about a lot in the podcast, it's about leading by example. And if you're doing that, that would inspire others to do that within your team. The next one is be non-judgmental. Just take that breath, digest that information, and say thank you. Number 4 is about being vulnerable. We don't grow within our comfort zone. We have to step out of our comfort zone to be able to grow. And sometimes we have to hear things that we don't perhaps like or don't perhaps fully agree with. And being vulnerable is challenging. Being open and saying to someone, please give me feedback, is a really important skill and not one that everyone feels comfortable with. And we touched on this already, but separate your performance from your identity. This isn't a personal attack on you as a human being. This is about your performance and how you can become better. And in boutique fitness, the last one is key. Your coaching ability, your sales results, your leadership skills, those are what are being evaluated, not your worth as a person. And the most successful businesses are the ones that really embrace a feedback culture and that everybody across all levels have that ability to give feedback up and down within their teams. And if you want to create a feedback-rich culture, don't just give it, ask for it as well. As leaders, how often have you genuinely said to your team or the people around you in your life and asked them for feedback? And a lot of us forget that piece. We're often, giving feedback day to day, probably not as much according to the statistics that we should be, but actually how much can you physically ask someone for feedback? And this is an easy 6-step process for this one. And it's about thinking about how you make this easier because it's not comfortable. We're asking you to step out of your comfort zone here. We're asking you to grow. We're asking you to be vulnerable. So number 1, embrace those negative emotions. It's okay to have them. We all have them. And we will all move through them at different paces. Number 2, have a go-to question. So have a question that you feel that gives you some comfort that you can ask, whether it be one of your frontline team members, a more senior member of the team, whoever it may be. And it could be as simple as, what's one thing I could do better for the team? The next one, accept the other person's discomfort. Feedback isn't easy for either person involved here. Often people giving feedback find it really challenging. They don't want to, going back to those myths that we talked about at the start, they don't want to hurt someone's feelings. There's perception that it is personal. It's not, it's about performance. So accept that person's discomfort, showing that you understand that it's potentially challenging for them. And that can be as simple as, I would love some feedback, what's one thing I could do better for the team? I appreciate this is probably quite hard for you to share with me, but I just want to reassure you, I'm asking this because I really want to grow. I really want to understand how I can do more and help the team better. And the next one is one that people are notoriously bad at doing, and it is challenging. But when someone gives you feedback, listen to understand, not to defect. So I want you to think about just saying thank you, nothing else. We shouldn't be saying but, thank you, but, or thank you, I think this, or thank you, oh, that happened because of XYZ. And it's really hard to do. We're all guilty of it. But really consciously, when someone gives you that feedback, take a deep breath and just say thank you. The next point here is about closing the loop. So as I said, we're thanking them, and then we're going to show them that you're going to take this away and act on that feedback. Because people won't continue to give feedback if they feel it's falling on deaf ears. And I think most importantly here, especially as a leader in your business, make it a habit. It shouldn't just be a one-off. Whether you need to set a calendar reminder in your phone that every week, every month, whatever time period you decide to do it, you're going to ask your team feedback. But make it a habit. See your team grow in confidence in giving you feedback, because there will be some reluctance to start with, especially if you're the leader in the business. And I think it's important to remember that when leaders ask for feedback, they send the message that this is safe, this is normal, this is what we want to grow, and that culture develops from there. And the last thing I want to touch on today is courageous conversations. And we know not all feedback is quick and simple. And with feedback, it's often given in the moment at a particular time. And you do need to think about the location, the timing, etc. for that. But feedback isn't something that should be given days, weeks, months after it happened. It should be given fairly promptly in that particular moment. But some conversations are genuinely courageous. And the definition of the key foundations here are: a courageous conversation has to have emotional exposure. It has to have truth and care, and it comes back to those conversations that we've had in the past around radical candor. It has to have honesty. It has to be vulnerable, and it has to have a clear intent. There's got to be an objective as to why this is happening. And ultimately, the goal here is to strengthen the connection. It's not about winning or losing. And that's where Stephen Covey's win-win mindset really comes into this. And it's something that is so powerful in your journey as a leader, is to shift your mindset from me versus you, or us versus the issue. So you both want to win. We want a win-win mindset. We don't want one person to go away feeling, oh, I won, I shared how I felt, they're going to change. And the other person walking away feeling like they lost. Because that will only build resentment, it will build negativity, and it will end in that person leaving down the line. It's about building mutual respect, mutual benefit, and an abundance mindset. So instead of saying you need to fix your class schedule to your studio manager, let's try to figure out together how we can make the schedule work better for you and our members. So you're both working together. So let's recap. We've covered a lot today. So feedback isn't a weapon, it's a gift. Myths keep us silent, but feed forward and using that model helps us keep that feedback constructive and makes it easier because we have a framework. And don't be afraid to practice it. Use it. Practice with whether it be a family member or a friend. If you've got to have one of those big conversations and something you feel a little bit uncomfortable with, role play it. Try it out first. Get feedback as to how that came across, because you want it to come across with trust and care. And ask for feedback. The more you do it, the more it will normalize it. And receiving feedback is a process. And using that STARA model helps us understand how we're feeling and also how others are feeling when they go through that. And don't be afraid of having courageous conversations. As a leader, you have to have them. And the more you do it, it helps build strength and trust within your organization. So, my challenge for you this week is have one uncomfortable conversation using the FeedForward model, and focus on the future, the growth, and most importantly, lead with care and clarity. So, we hope you've enjoyed this episode today and it's given you some useful tools and models to be able to use within your organization to really create that culture of feedback. So if today has resonated with you, please do share it with another leader who needs to hear it, or another studio owner, or perhaps someone within your team. And be sure to like and comment on this episode as well, as we love to hear your thoughts. So until then, we look forward to hearing from you again soon, and we hope you join us on one of our upcoming podcasts.